Hi, I'm Chad with Move For a Guitar. This lesson is from our course, Music Theory 2. All the lessons for this course are free on YouTube, so you can follow right along with the playlist or look in the description below for links to the rest of the lessons. To accelerate your learning though, I highly recommend you download the corresponding Music Theory 2 workbook and eGuide. To learn more about the workbook and eGuide, click the link on the screen or look in the description below. Welcome to Music Theory 2, Lesson 2. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you all the intervals between the strings. So now that we've looked at intervals on one strings and their names, we're going to look at intervals between strings. So I'm talking about between the 6th and 5th string, between the 5th and 4th string, and so on. And this is really important because, like I talked about in Music Theory 1, the guitar is different than an instrument like the piano. The piano is all moving in one direction, moving horizontally. But the guitar is moving horizontally and vertically, which can get really confusing really quick if you don't understand it. So what happens is you end up with notes that have the same names but are different pitches, but you also end up with notes with the same name and the same pitch, just on different strings. So that can get confusing, and it's confusing that you can go up in pitch going this way, but you can also go up in pitch going this way. So it just takes understanding what's going on, and understanding the intervals between the strings is really important for that. It's a really important building block. So first off, you should already know the string names if you're taking this lesson, but I'll just do a quick review in case you don't. So your 6th string is E. Your 5th string is A. Your 4th string is D. Your 3rd string is G. Your 2nd string is B. And your 1st string is E again. And if you remember from Music Theory 1, this E is 2 octave higher than this E. So the E on the 1st string is 2 octave higher than the E on the 6th string. So now I'm going to go over the intervals between these strings. So from E to A, then from A to D, and so on. And like I said, this is really important for understanding how your guitar works, how it's laid out, and to really start mastering the guitar. So the interval distance between E and A is a fourth, or a perfect fourth, which, if you remember from the last lesson, that's 2.5 steps apart. It's a perfect fourth, or just known as a 4. So what's going on right here with this interval distance is the same as what's going on between these two strings, from this E to this A. Because if I was to write this A right here on the same string as this E, it'd be right here, and you can see that's 2.5 steps apart. You have 1 step, 2 steps, half step. So this right here is a perfect fourth, because this note right here is the exact same note as this note, because they're unison notes. And if you don't remember that, go back to Music Theory 1. Now, the nice thing about this being a perfect fourth apart is that almost all of the strings are a perfect fourth apart. So from E to A is a perfect fourth, from A to D is a perfect fourth, from D to G is a perfect fourth, and then from B to E is a perfect fourth. You can see between G and B, I haven't written that in yet, because it's the one place on the guitar where the strings are not a perfect fourth apart. And they're actually a major third apart. So from G to B is a major third apart. Everything else is a perfect fourth apart. So if you remember from the last lesson, that's 2 whole steps apart if they're on the same string. So if I was to write a B on the same string as this G, it'd be right here, and that's 2 whole steps apart. Here's 1 step, here's the next step, and this B and this B are unison notes. And when I'm talking about these being the distance they are between each other, so from this note to this note, I'm talking about from E to A. I'm not talking about going back from A to E. That's actually a different interval. So we're talking about from E to A is a perfect fourth, from A to D is a perfect fourth, and so on. So everything being a perfect fourth apart except for G to B actually makes the guitar easier to play because it makes the shapes you play on the guitar easier, which I'll demonstrate. But it does make the guitar a little bit confusing because once you hit the second string, you have to change things up, which I'll explain as we go through these lessons. If everything was a perfect fourth apart, it would actually be easier to memorize the notes on your guitar and easier to see what's going on most of the time, but it would make shapes that you hold a lot harder to play. So now I'm going to just turn the fretboard on its side so that it's vertical. Again, we have 6th string here, 1st string here, just because I want to go over something with you. And I want to talk about why this one interval is different than all the others. So E to A is a perfect fourth, A to D is a perfect fourth, D to G is a perfect fourth, but then G to B is a major third, and then back to B to E is a perfect fourth. And there's a reason that the guitar is tuned that way. And I should have pointed out, this is all in standard tuning. You can tune your guitar in other ways, but you only need to worry about standard tuning for now. I'm going to base everything we're talking about in these music theory lessons on standard tuning. And you should really understand standard tuning and be really comfortable with it before you even think about other tunings, because standard tuning is the most important. So everything being a perfect fourth apart except for G to B being a major third apart, it helps a lot with actually being able to finger things on your guitar, actually be able to play shapes, which I'm going to show you and explain. But it does make it a little harder to memorize things on guitar because that second string changes things up. And I'm going to go over that now. So for example, this is an E major shape, just an open E major shape. Hopefully you can recognize that because it's a really common chord shape. Really, if everything was tuned in perfect fourths, if I wanted to play this on any of the string sets, I should just be able to drop that same shape down, and then here I should be able to end up with an A major shape. So if everything was tuned in perfect fourths, this would actually be your A major shape. This is an A note, this is your root note for this shape, just like with this shape, this is an E note, this is your root note. I should just be able to drop that down and then get an A major chord. And then that would be really easy to memorize because you're just playing the same shape. You'd get an E major, then you drop everything down, get an A major. But because from here to here is tuned differently, is tuned as a major third, that means you actually have to move this note up 1 fret, which then gives you this shape, which should be really familiar as an A major shape. And then again, if we were to drop this shape down, because of the tuning here, you need to move this one note up half a fret or half a step, 1 fret, half a step, and that would give you your D major shape. So if everything was tuned in perfect fourths, you could just take that E major shape and play it down through all the string sets. You get an E major, then an A major, and a D major, and just be able to hold the same shape the whole time. But because of the tuning between these two strings, every time you hit the second string, you have to move something up, that one note up, half a step or 1 fret. And you may wonder why that is. That seems like it's just unnecessary, but it actually makes the guitar easier to play. It makes it harder to memorize shapes and memorize notes on your guitar, but it makes it easier to fret different shapes, which I'm going to demonstrate on the guitar. So like I was saying, if the guitar was tuned all in perfect fourths, I should be able to take this E major shape that you should know, and then just drop all my fingers down 1 string towards the floor and keep that same shape, and I should have an A major chord now. This should still be a major shape if everything was tuned in fourths. But because between the G string and the B string is tuned in a major third, I need to move the note that's on the second string up half a step, and then that would be my new shape. So this is your A major shape because of that, and that should be a chord you recognize as well. And then again, if I dropped everything down towards the floor, 1 string, now I have to move the note that's on the second string up again, and that gives me my D major shape. So again, anytime you're moving a shape through your strings, anytime you hit that second string, you have to move that 1 note up half a step. So like I was saying, because of the way the guitar is tuned, it makes it harder to memorize where notes are and be able to visualize that, because things change once you hit that second string. But it actually makes different chord shapes much easier to play. For example, this E-shaped bar chord, I'm playing a G major bar chord. It's an E major shape if you know the cage system. If the guitar was tuned all in perfect fourths, I wouldn't be able to hold this shape at all, because this one note, which is under my first finger bar that's on the second string, I'd have to move that back half a step, and there's no comfortable way to do that because I'm barring everything with my first finger. I'd have this one note behind that first finger right here. There'd be no comfortable way to do that, so it actually makes a lot of chords a lot easier to play. And if that seems a little confusing, don't worry about it for now. Just understand that everything is tuned a perfect fourth apart except G to B, which means anytime you have a shape going through these strings, anytime you hit the second string, you have to move that one note up half a step or one fret to accommodate the different tuning here. And that may be really confusing right now. As we're going through these lessons, it'll all become really clear to you, so don't worry about it too much. But just understand that it makes things harder to memorize on guitar, but it actually makes them easier to play. So that's an explanation of the intervals between the strings. In the next lesson, I'm going to teach you interval shapes. Look in your Music Theory 2 workbook for step-by-step guidance on how to retain this information and what to do next. And remember, all the charts and diagrams for this lesson are in your Music Theory 2 eGuide for you to reference at any time.